To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. And by opposing end them. We are all expendable, really. I was thinking about that last night on the way home from work, after I hit that raccoon. The roads were slushy and I didn't stop. No damage to the car. It looked dead enough. My boss has been picking on me for the last year now. Well, just little things, really. She's a new kid on the block, young. She thinks she knows my job better than I do. 24 years I've been at it, and now she wants to check everything I do. Always asking if I've verified the facts, as if I wouldn't. She holds up the process. I can't get anything done on time anymore. Then she has the nerve to say, well, suggest anyway, that I'm not being productive enough. Keep thinking of that little raccoon. It never did anything to me, never undermined me, never made my life miserable, nothing. 24 years. I've always been patted on the back for what I've accomplished. Not anymore. Of course, she's one of those young micromanagers from some fancy business school. This week's trend in management styles person, let's find a reason to get rid of a few people person. My gran would have said, she'll throw out the baby with the bathwater, that one. Yeah. I guess people are expendable. Not sure why it's the little guy who's always expendable, though. You know, the ones who work overtime because they enjoy their work. The ones who don't complain when they're sent out on the road at the last minute, when they should be going home. The ones who care about the clients. We had a little disagreement the other day. She told me I was being impudent. Impudent. She's young enough to be my grandchild, for God's sake. So who's the impudent one, eh? Anyway, she can't even say the word. She said I was being imprudent. Imprudent. I know it's a word, but it's not what she meant. She has no sense of humor, no sense of collegiality. No sense at all, in fact. Nancy, my secretary, well, I guess she's really the office administrator for our whole department. She knows I've been at breaking point lately, so she got me this appointment with this counselor. He just sat there in this comfortable armchair, legs crossed, saying nothing. Well, I had to think up things to say to fill the 50 minutes. Dreadful Argyle socks, skinny legs. Well, we've become fast off as friends lately, Nancy and me. Co-conspirators, let's say. We joke a lot, we bitch a lot. It's mutual therapy. A lot better than that guy who probably gets $200 an hour or so anyway. I know I would have been a lot better off if I'd been more ambitious, more of a yes man. But I just enjoy my work, and I'm good at it too. I never wanted to be a manager. Managers have no life. Oh, I suppose they think they do, but they don't really. Not as far as I can tell, anyway. I know she's picking on me with a purpose in mind. I know what they think. They think a younger person would be more efficient. What they really mean is that a younger person would save them a bundle of money because they wouldn't have to pay them nearly so much. She's insecure, you can tell. Always trying to impress, trying to be one of the big boys. It's laughable, really. Of course, I've heard that she's sleeping with the CEO. He got her the job, apparently. Well, that's the office buzz, anyway. I keep thinking of that little raccoon. I think it was Jesus that said, "If you think it, you've done it." Well, something like that anyway. Of course, it would have been in good King James English. Well, I had been thinking. The thoughts weren't very nice. There she was coming up the stairs, the boss lady. Well, her name's Susan, but Nancy and I call her the she-wolf. She's always dressed like she's going to the opera, or worse, the ballet. Anyway, there she comes, a little skip in her step. At least she doesn't take the elevator up 1 or 2 flights like most of the big cheeses. I didn't think she saw me standing on the landing above. I thought it might be easy to give her a little nudge. I mean, in those heels she wears, she wouldn't exactly be stable. A little tumble might do her some good. But just then I hear this irritating voice. "Malcolm Andrew Reed, don't you dare." It's my dear dead mother. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not an evil person. It's just when I'm pushed around, eventually I'll push back. I didn't know what to do. I hesitated. I needed time to think. And then, as she passed by, she said, "Oh, careful, your shoelace is dragging." I looked down. Damned laces. They're always coming untied. I usually double tie them. Must have been in a rush that morning. So I bent down to tie them up and mumbled, "Thanks." Oh, she'd already gone by. Bending down like that, I feel a bit dizzy. Well, just then, some young dude from one of the other departments comes running round the corner and bumps into me there in that vulnerable bum in the air, one leg back position. Well, that's what they tell me anyway. Well, not about the bum in the air, but about the bump. I sure felt the blast off. Everything in slow motion. The next thing I know, I'm lying at the bottom of the stairs on the landing below, everything a blur. Papers flying everywhere, people talking rapidly, and the young dude freaking out. Then I blacked out. When I came round, I was in the hospital. Broken arm, dislocated shoulder, cracked ribs dislocated, pelvis major concussion. The nurse said I'd be laid up for quite some time. The doctor, oh, he was about 12, no bedside manner, said I was lucky I didn't break my neck, could have ended up a paraplegic or worse. Nancy came in to see me. First thing she says when she sees me is, "Oh, you should be taking some time off work." Like, yeah, you think. She-Wolf came in next. I was still groggy. Her lips were moving, but what I was seeing was this head of a wolf licking its lips. You know, like in that Disney cartoon. But then I thought it was a dream, a confusing one. As I came round more, I heard her say that she would be making off that time off work request for me. I didn't say anything. Then, as she was leaving, I heard her say, "Should have done up that shoelace." I even think she had a smirk on her face. If it hadn't hurt so much, I would have thrown my urinal at her. Nancy, she was definitely stifling a giggle. Nancy came round to see me shortly after the hospital had sent me home. She told me about all the changes at work, about all the meetings with the useless consultants, meetings about meetings, meetings about the results of meetings, meetings about why is productivity down because of meetings. She told me that the young dude had sent me into orbit would be taking over some of my files. And oh yes, when I get back to work, I won't have my own office anymore. They're reconfiguring the space to save money. It will all be cubicles, except for the big cheeses, of course. Well, it was a couple of months before I got back to work, part-time at first. She-Wolf called me into the office shortly after I got back for a chat. When I went in, she was wearing these sunglasses. Kind of made her look like that raccoon. Well, jokingly, I said, was I too bright for her? She looked at me like I was a complete idiot. She said she'd just been to the optometrist and had drops in her eyes. She asked me what I thought about the new arrangement. I told her what I thought. She didn't like that. She said I'd adjust. Said I'd have to. It's the new thing, good for morale and all that. Morale. That's a joke. It sure isn't good for concentration, let me tell you. The guy on the other side of the half wall, he's always on the phone. And the other day, I think he was even having phone sex. But then he's another department, so maybe that's their thing. She told me that the dude, name's Adam or something like that, he'd be taking over that big project I'd been working on. My heart sank. The one I'd worked on for the last year. The one I loved working on so much. The one I had networked and developed. Oh, couldn't be helped, she said. They had to move it along, and I needed time to get back up to speed after the accident and so forth. Oh, her lips were moving, but what I was hearing was that I am dead meat, being shuffled off to the sidelines, eased out to pasture at 58. I hadn't been very happy at work lately. Not since you'd taken away most of my files, anyway. Oh, she said it was temporary. Said I was helping to give the young dude a leg up. Well, that's a joke. I'm the one with the leg up now. Last week, I was feeling kind of down. One afternoon, I told Nancy that I was going to go home early. And as I was leaving, she leaned over and whispered, "Life's a trip, kiddo, but don't encourage it." She looked down at my feet. My shoelace was untied again. But then it seems my whole life is coming untied. Well, at least it was sunny out. I just bought this new car, red, a convertible. I loved it. I thought a spin on the highway would calm me down a bit. Well, because of my injuries after that tumble, they'd given me this temporary parking space in the garage next to the elevators. It's where the big cheeses get to park. I loved sitting in the driver's seat of that car. I felt almost young again. The sound of the engine starting up would send chills up my spine. And in that garage, the echo made it sound all the more macho. I started to back up out of the parking space, and then I noticed some people coming in my direction. So I stopped, put it in park, and waited for them to pass. Then I saw that she was coming, and she was still wearing those raccoon sunglasses. My hand was sweating on the console. I clenched my jaws. I thought a little scare would do us some good, so I put it in reverse and gunned it. Next thing I know, I'm squinting at bright lights, hearing the echo of voices and feeling people rushing past me. I was in the hospital again. Broken nose, whiplash, dislocated shoulder, cracked ribs, broken leg, major concussion again. When I came round, Nancy was there, and she was giving me this rather pathetic look. But I could tell she was withholding this guffaw. She said with my two black eyes, I looked like a raccoon. And then she said I'd rammed the car into the parking lot garage wall. At a good speed, too. Car was a wreck. Good thing I couldn't see it. She said I must have hit the accelerator rather than the brake when I was backing up, only she hesitated, gave me this weird look. She said the car was in drive, not reverse. She shook her head and said, must be because I wasn't used to the console on the new car. It was She-Wolf who'd called the ambulance, apparently. It's funny. I thought I'd heard someone say, you don't know whether you're coming or going, do you? Do you? Do you? Do you? Do you? Only I thought it was a dream. Please God, all of it, a dream. A nightmare, really. My head was spinning. Had I really tried to run her down? I had been so depressed that day. Because of the second concussion in a relatively short period of time, the hospitals kept me in longer than usual. Nancy came by to see me after I'd been here a few days. She told me there'd been this big write-up about the accident in the weekly office bulletin. She brought in a bundle of cards with good wishes. She read me the article. It talked about me in such glowing terms, I thought, I must be dead. Even my son had heard about it. He lives out on the West Coast. Facebook, probably. He's a busy big shot out there. We don't see anything of each other and are only in touch periodically. When his mother and I separated, about 30 years ago now, she took him out west with her new husband. I didn't mind, actually. After all, I was young and preoccupied with other things back then. But when the nurse came in and said that a Jason Shazinski was on the phone, I had to think. I didn't know who it was. But then I was heavily medicated, so that probably explained it. And anyway, Shazinski isn't my last name. It's his stepdad's. He said he was going to be in town in a couple of weeks and would like to stop by if it was all right. Of course, I said sure, said I'd probably be home by then. Sometimes bad things make good things possible, I guess. After all, it would be nice to see him. I sure don't want to see She-Wolf, though, and Nancy tells me she's coming by later in the week. Shit. I mean, surely she's guessed. How could she not? I even wonder if Nancy suspects. I mean, she did give me that funny look. Shortly after Nancy left, who sauntered in? But the young dude, the one who'd rammed me and taken over my files. His name's not Adam after all, it's Adrian. Adrian. He was very nervous, in fact. He said he was sorry to bother me, but he had to talk to me. The deadline on that big project is coming due, and a problem has arisen. He needs to talk to me to find out what I know about the players and so forth. He needs my advice. Advice from me. Drugged, wrapped up like an oversized Egyptian mummy. He let it slip that he's just accepted this big job with the UN, and he's going to be leaving about the same time the files do. He said, oh, don't tell anyone, will you? I mean, I haven't told anyone yet. Like, I had to be sure, like it's a big move, like Geneva. He's a nice kid. A bit wet behind the ears, but nice. We talked for quite a while. Well, until the army sergeant nurse came in with the meds. Well, she's got a good heart. But you don't argue with her. She gave him his marching orders. So he thanked me, and then, as he was gathering up his papers, he managed to drop them all over the floor. As he was picking them up, he kept saying, sorry for bothering you, sorry, so sorry. Obviously, a good Canadian kid. Said he'd like to come back if it was all right. You know, kind of reminds me of that puppy I'd had as a kid. Always so excited to see me when I got home from school. You know, wagging its tail. Well, wagging its whole body, really. Then when I'd pick him up, it'd pee on me with that innocent, lovable puppy face. The nurse said I was smiling. She hadn't seen me do that since I'd come in. She said with my two shiners, it made me look like a raccoon that had just nabbed a fish. She laughed. The hospital sent me home after 10 days or so. Maybe a bit longer. It sure gets boring after a while. You know, I'm not the sort of person who watches a lot of television. Reading is really my thing, when I've got the time. I guess I've had plenty of that recently too, haven't I? Actually, I've been reading Julius Caesar, Shakespeare. Hadn't read that since high school. But then I've been feeling a bit like poor old Julius lately. However, it was Brutus that struck a chord with me, in that there is a tide in the affairs of men's speech. Nice stuff. Seize the day and all that. Anyway, I have been going to physiotherapy a couple of times a week. And Adrian's been stopping by quite a bit to work on that file with me. That's the best part. She-Wolf doesn't know he's been coming, though. Actually, she never did come to the hospital to see me. But then Nancy said her mother had had a stroke or something, and that she'd had to go somewhere out west. Alberta, I think. Somewhere out there anyway. My son, sounds funny to say that word, son. Anyway, he finally did make that visit to see me a few days ago, here at the condo. He said his mother was doing really well. Haven't seen her in almost 30 years. We were almost high school sweethearts and thought we always would be. Naive, I guess. Oh, he's a big shot and he's always traveling up and down the East Coast, China and places like that. It was a nice visit. Awkward at first, but then I guess that is understandable. He said he'd try and keep more in touch. Oh, She-Wolf came by too. Just a quick visit to tidy some things up before she headed back west. Said she didn't know how long she'd be gone. Anyway, she didn't want to talk about that. She wanted to ask me some questions about some of the files. She'll be taking an extended leave of absence. Turns out her mother has cancer. Not a stroke, as Nancy had indicated. And her father has early dementia. She couldn't be much older than I am, if that. What a mess. I asked her if she knew who would be taking over her job while she was gone. Said she didn't know. Said it was up to the CEO. I don't know why, but as she was going, I said, "You're going to miss him, aren't you?" She turned and held me in her sights with this look. Somewhere between puzzled, bemused, and dumbstruck. At that moment, I just wished I had kept my big mouth shut. Then she said, "Miss whom?" Only it sounded like, "Miss whom, you asshole?" She actually said whom. Nobody says whom anymore. Anyway, I said, "The CEO, I thought you were seeing him." She turned and started to leave, and then she stopped and turned around again and fixed me dangerously in her sights. There was this very long silence, deadly. But then it was as if the ice melted, and I even thought I saw a little smile somewhere on her face. And she said, "You need to get your facts straight. Verify your sources." And then she turned, and as she went out the door, I think I heard, "Smart ass." Smart ass. I think that's what she said anyway. At least she's finally acknowledged my intelligence. I haven't seen her since. Been feeling a lot more mobile lately. I was going stir crazy here in the condo. Been working out a bit. I went to the gym the other day to work with a trainer. Not the one in the condo. The gym, I mean. It's not very good. Got to get these arms and legs back into shape. Okay, the tummy too needs a bit of work. Okay. Needs a lot of work. Adrian's been coming round, and we finally think we've got the file into great shape. He's had some good ideas. Needed a bit of polishing. He's going to hand it off to the CEO next week, before he leaves. He's given his notice now. I'm quite excited for him. He's a good kid. He's going to go a long way. And I don't mean just Brussels. Nancy says that people aren't happy at work. Too many changes, too much work, too much uncertainty. She says it's a good thing that I've been away from the place. Doom and gloom. Said the CEO had been interviewed about some of the changes on TV just yesterday. Had I seen it? Shook my head. I hadn't. I told Nancy what She-Wolf had said when I'd mentioned the CEO. She said, "Well, where have you been?" "Oh yeah, he, mostly in the hospital for the last year." I said, "Well, you told me that they were an item." She said, "No, I told you that they were seeing a lot of each other." And they were, as friends. Turns out they'd both gone to Harvard together. Well, not together, but they'd both been there, actually 25 years apart. Then she gets this conspiratory look on her face. And she says, "He's gay, you know. Guess you missed that bit of breaking news too." And she giggled. Anyway, Nancy says I'm looking a lot better. Told her I'd been going to the gym. She said, "Where?" I said, "The one downtown next to the office." Said I had to get back into shape. She said, "What one have you chosen? Round?" I wanted to smack her. Told her that the workout felt good, but it was exhausting. Said the trainer was a bit of a taskmaster and way too serious. Then I told her about something that had happened at the gym a couple of days ago. Well, I tell her most things now. Gotta tell someone. I'd been doing sit-ups on the floor by the weight machines. Felt like an idiot sitting out there in the open, grunting after only 10 sit-ups or so, with the trainer holding my legs down. Well, I'd looked around to make sure no one was watching, and I noticed that this guy was looking at me. Nice looking, about my age, maybe 5 years younger. It's hard to tell. But he had this big grin on his face. And I think he winked at me. Nancy said, "Did I wink back?" Oh, I was way too embarrassed. I said no, I'd looked away. Nancy said, "Well, if you're so close, why haven't you been coming by the office? People are asking about you." Well, I said, because when the training's over, I'm way too tired to be nice. And anyway, I need my pills and a good shot of scotch. Well, ever than that, the Mother Superior, Nancy, said, "It's time you got off those pain pills." I said, yeah, I know, I'm cutting back, and I am. She said, "Well, you're looking a lot better anyway for an old guy. Don't look like Zorro anymore." Then that annoying giggle again. She's real good for my deflated ego. Nancy hasn't heard who's going to be the new department manager or anything. I said, well, it's probably going to be some 15-year-old high school grad. She laughed. We both did. First time in months it hasn't hurt. Just got a call from Jason. He was quite excited, I could tell. He told me he's just been offered this big job in Calgary. I said, "Calgary? It snows there in August, for God's sake." He said, "Yeah, I know. Great skiing close by, though." And then he said, just out of the blue, he said, "I've met someone." Just like that. Well, I said, "Well, that's great. I mean, what else was I supposed to say?" And he said, "Actually, Dad." Yeah, he said, "Dad." He'd never said that to me before. He said, "Actually, Dad, I first met her at the lobby of your condo." Turns out they'd just exchanged a few words there, but he'd run into her again in some bar in Calgary when he'd gone out there for his first interview about a month ago. He told me she was working for some big corporation out there, oil or something like that. Well, I wasn't really paying much attention. After the dad thing, I was kind of choked up. Really got to me. It's a good thing it wasn't a video call, that's all I can say. We talked for a while longer, and then he said I'd like her because she was smart and funny, and best of all, he said, quirky. Kind of like you, Dad. Then he said, "Yikes, sorry, gotta run, picking up soon, about 20 minutes. We're off to the ballet tonight." "No, it's not your thing, but she loves it. And anyway, she sure needs a break. She's been at the hospice all day. Talk soon, Dad." You think I would have figured it out. I mean, 1 + 1 + 1 makes 3. But then math was never my strong point. It took a while before that proverbial penny dropped, as my gran used to say. So I'd asked Nancy if she'd heard anything more about when She-Wolf might be coming back, and she hadn't. So I figured that she couldn't have let the office know then. Maybe she was thinking that she wasn't going to be staying out west after all. Well, my son had never had much luck in the proverbial conjugal relation department. I mean, guess he got that from me. So I thought he could use a little help from his friend. So I could probably cope with her being some sort of future daughter-in-law, but I sure didn't want her back as my tormentor. But then about 6 weeks ago, Adrian called to say that the CEO was really impressed with the work that we had done. Yeah, he said that. He said he'd told the CEO that it really was my work and that he had just helped out in the end. I mean, after all, he doesn't need the praise. He's leaving. He said the CEO didn't think he had met me, but he had a feeling he'd heard about me from someone. She-wolf, probably. I cringed at that. What exactly had she told him? That some geriatric maniac had tried to run her down? Great. Adrian says that the CEO wants to see me when I get back to work, that his admin assistant's going to give me a call to set up an appointment in the next week or two. Well, I didn't know anything about her, so I asked Nancy. All she said was that she's really efficient and that she practically runs the whole show. Well, then Adrian said that it had been really great working with me, that he'd learned a lot. He wanted to keep in touch. He was leaving for Geneva in 3 days. Well, in fact, I got an email from him just last week and he's loving it already. I'm supposed to go back to work next week, but actually I've been working from home recently on some new files. But I'm sure not looking forward to being back in that office. I mean, I don't really know who the new department manager is going to be. It seems to me it's been running just perfectly without one anyway. Oh, it'll probably be another young micromanager from one of those fancy business schools. Makes my blood boil. Anyway, when the CEO's executive assistant called me to set up that appointment, I casually mentioned that I hoped She-Wolf would be coming back soon, but that I'd heard from a friend of hers that she had just accepted this big job out west. She seemed surprised. She didn't say anything. So I said, well, maybe it's just a rumor. Said I hope so anyway. But she was very quiet, the executive assistant. Been back at work about a month now. I really wasn't looking forward to it at first, but I'm loving it now. Have my own office again. Great view down the avenue, big windows. I'd never thought I'd be getting the promotion. Well, any promotion really, I couldn't believe it. Nancy's working for me exclusively now. I had a bit of a rough start at first though. I mean, I had to let some people go. I found that kind of tough. But then Nancy reminded me that I'm a company man now. She said, in the real world, kiddo, you've got to make some tough decisions. She said it would be imprudent of me if I didn't trim the fat. I think she was talking about the personnel. I'd never been on the executive floor before. I stood in front of those elevator doors for what seemed like an eternity before I had the courage to press the up button. 2 floors up, doors open, and there I was in this rather grand reception area. CEO's admin assistant greeted me. She said he was expecting me, that he'd be with me shortly. Would I like some coffee? I said no. So I sat rather uneasily in this lounge area. Well, it was more of an anteroom to his office, really. I looked around. The walls were covered in art. Nature art. Tiresome stuff, if you ask me. Oh, there was one of an eagle with its wings spread, talons open, preying on this terrified rabbit. Another of a grizzly with a large salmon pronged in its claws. A wolf lurking. No, big and small prints. Well, maybe originals for all I know. And next to his office door, a rather large one, of a raccoon nursing its young. I burst out laughing out loud, like it just erupted from somewhere deep inside me. I was really embarrassed. I was very nervous. His assistant was peering at me over her glasses with this "we are not amused" look. But I could tell she really was amused. I tried to look relaxed. I wasn't. The more I tried, the less I was. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. Didn't really know why I was there. I assumed it had something to do with the file, to congratulate me in person, probably. Something like that, anyway. Well, I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know how old he was. Nothing. I had no reason to know. Our paths had never crossed. It was just a name I'd seen 1,000 times before in print. But then I'd always preferred to travel under the radar, so to speak. It's much safer that way. Nose to the grindstone, low key. That's me. But when I was finally ushered into his office, I felt my face go immediately red hot. My throat went dry. I froze. Must have looked like a real idiot. He smiled, more of a grin actually. And in that moment, I felt like I just walked into a very important meeting with my fly wide open, or worse, that I'd greeted his grin with one of my own, only I had a piece of spinach stuck in my front teeth. He looked down at my feet, and then a voice I'd never heard before said, "Better do up that shoelace." And then he winked at me. This time, I didn't look away. Hello? Oh, hi, Dan. No, no, just reading. No, nothing work related. Well, actually, Shakespeare. All's well that ends well. Uh-huh. Oh, no, no plans. Tonight? Othello? Where's it playing? Oh, the ballet? No, no, no. I love the ballet. It's just I didn't know where it was playing. Uh-huh. Yeah. What time? Where? Okay, great. Yes. See you there then. Okay. Bye.